Ethan Parker, a 25-year-old visionary, stood atop the world as the founder and CEO of a thriving technology company. His meteoric rise had brought him wealth beyond his years. From the opulent penthouse in the city's heart, he often gazed down at the bustling streets below, reflecting on his journey. Ethan felt an unshakable emptiness despite his remarkable achievements and the luxury that enveloped him. He had always known he was adopted and cherished his adoptive parents, Grace and William, deeply. Yet, a profound yearning to uncover his biological roots lingered. Raised in a nurturing environment, Ethan had known nothing but love and support from Grace and William, who had taken him in as a baby. They provided him with endless opportunities to flourish and, on his 18th birthday, revealed the truth about his adoption. They reassured him of their unwavering love, emphasizing that he would forever be their son, regardless of his origins. While grateful for the love and care of his adoptive parents, Ethan's curiosity about his birth parents grew over time. He pondered why they had given him up and what they were like. His determination to uncover his past intensified as his business flourished and his wealth multiplied. He invested significant time and resources into finding his biological parents, enlisting a team of private investigators to aid in his quest. Despite numerous setbacks and scant information, Ethan remained resolute. After months of relentless searching, the investigators finally located his birth parents. Emily Johnson and David Johnson lived in a humble neighborhood on the city's outskirts, just a few hours away. Upon hearing the news, Ethan was overwhelmed with excitement, apprehension, and a touch of fear. Questions flooded his mind. What kind of people were his birth parents? Why had they given him up for adoption? Would they embrace him or turn him away? Ethan knew he had to confront this chapter of his life despite his uncertainties. With a heart full of anticipation and trepidation, he resolved to meet his birth parents, unaware of the unexpected twist awaiting him. Instead of presenting himself as the successful millionaire he was, Ethan decided to disguise himself as a humble, unemployed young man. He wanted their first encounter to be free from the influence of wealth, without prejudice or expectations clouding the truth. Determined to uncover the honest Emily and David, Ethan sought to understand whether their decision to give him up for adoption was driven by love or other reasons. With his heart racing, Ethan prepared for the most important meeting of his life. He knew this journey would take him to unfamiliar places, both emotionally and physically, but he was ready to face it. The search for his identity and the answers he longed for was about to begin. Standing before the mirror, Ethan barely recognized himself. He had traded his expensive designer suit for worn, baggy clothes, and his meticulously styled hair was now combed back sloppily. His appearance now reflected that of a young man who had fallen on hard times, struggling to make ends meet, perfect for his plan to visit his biological parents without revealing his true identity. As he prepared to leave, a mix of emotions washed over Ethan. Excitement surged within him at the prospect of finally meeting the people who had given him life, the ones he had searched for so long. Yet, nervousness gripped him as he wondered how they would react to seeing him. Would they recognize him in any way? Would they feel an instant connection? With a shaky sigh, Ethan left his penthouse and headed toward the modest neighborhood where Emily and David lived. He entered a completely different world as he moved away from the comfort of his luxurious life. The well-kept streets and imposing buildings gave way to simpler neighborhoods with humble homes and small family businesses. Ethan finally arrived at the address after a bus ride and a walk through unfamiliar streets. The researchers had given Ethan the address, and now he found himself standing in front of a modest house with faded paint and a small garden at the entrance. His heart pounded as he approached the door, trying to muster the courage to knock. Before doing so, he paused momentarily to reflect on his life and the path that had led him there. He thought about his adoptive parents, Grace and William, and all the love and support they had given him over the years. He wondered how they would feel if they knew what he was about to do, but he knew they would understand his need to seek answers. With a deep sigh, Ethan finally knocked on the door. The seconds felt eternal as he waited, his heart racing and his palms sweaty. Suddenly, the door opened, and Ethan found himself face to face with a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes. It was Emily, his biological mother. They both stared at each other for a moment, trying to recognize one another. Emily looked at him with confusion and curiosity, not knowing who this young stranger standing in her doorway was. Ethan, for his part, struggled to hold back tears at the sight of the woman who had given him life. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. In a trembling voice, he introduced himself as a young man looking for work, inventing a story about how he had arrived in the neighborhood by chance. Though a bit suspicious at first, Emily felt compassion for the young man and invited him in for a glass of water and some rest. As Ethan entered the house, he realized he was about to embark on an intense emotional journey. He was about to meet the people who had made the hardest decision of their lives by giving him up for adoption, and he didn't know what to expect. But he was determined to discover the truth, no matter how painful or complicated. Upon entering Emily and David's humble abode, Ethan was greeted with distrust and curiosity. The house's interior reflected simple living, with worn furniture and walls needing a fresh coat of paint. Emily guided him into the small living room, offering him a seat on a faded sofa. Ethan surveyed his surroundings, trying to imagine what his life would have been like if he had grown up there. Would he have had the same opportunities? Would he have achieved the success he now enjoyed? These questions haunted his mind as he waited for Emily to return with the promised glass of water. A few minutes later, Emily returned, accompanied by a tired-looking man with deep wrinkles lining his face. It was David, Ethan's biological father. They both sat across from him, looking at him with suspicion and curiosity. Remembering his alibi, Ethan began to tell a fictitious story about his life. He told them that he had grown up in foster care, struggling to get by in a world that seemed to be against him. As Ethan spoke, he couldn't help but notice the emotions flickering across Emily and David's faces. They listened intently, their expressions softening with each word. Despite the web of lies he was weaving, Ethan felt a strange connection to these people, his biological parents. And as the evening unfolded, he knew this was just the beginning of his quest for truth and understanding. He fabricated details about low-paying jobs and shattered dreams, painting a picture of a young man who had faced numerous obstacles. As he spoke, Ethan carefully studied Emily and David's reactions. He noticed how they exchanged furtive glances as if communicating silently. Did they suspect something? Did they see through his disguise and recognize the son they had given up for adoption so many years ago? Despite the initial awkwardness, the conversation began to flow more naturally. Emily and David shared some details about their lives, revealing the economic hardships they had faced and the sacrifices they had made to make ends meet. Ethan listened intently, trying to find some clue as to the reasons behind their decision to give him up for adoption. At one point, Emily got up and went to the kitchen, offering to prepare something to eat for their unexpected guest. Ethan accepted the offer and was grateful for the opportunity to extend his visit and gather more information. While Emily prepared the meal, David asked Ethan questions about his life and his plans for the future. Ethan improvised his answers, painting a bleak picture of an aimless young man struggling to find his place in the world. He watched David's expression darken as if he was remembering something painful. The meal passed in an atmosphere of awkward politeness. Ethan struggled to maintain his facade while Emily and David seemed deep in their thoughts. An underlying tension was in the air as if everyone was dancing around an undisclosed secret. As the visit dragged on, Ethan realized that his biological parents seemed restless and anxious for him to leave. Did his presence remind them of a decision they would rather forget, or was something deeper and more painful hidden behind their discomfort? Ethan knew he was playing a dangerous game by hiding his true identity, but he was determined to see it through. He needed answers, even if it meant facing uncomfortable truths and opening old wounds. With each passing minute, he got closer to unraveling the mystery surrounding his adoption and understanding the motivations behind the decision that had shaped his life. As the conversation progressed, Ethan decided to take a risk and delve deeper into his fictional story. With a lump in his throat, he revealed to Emily and David that he was unemployed and struggling financially. He described nights without a roof over his head and days without food. "Life hasn't been easy," he said, trembling with feigned vulnerability. "I've had to fight for everything, and sometimes it feels like I'm losing the battle." Emily's eyes welled up with tears, and she glanced at David, who who seemed equally affected by Ethan's story. The room was thick with emotion, and for a moment, it felt as though the weight of their shared history was pressing down on all of them. "We understand," Emily said softly. "We've had our struggles. Sometimes life forces us to make difficult choices that haunt us for years." Ethan's heart pounded as he sensed a breakthrough. He pressed on, hoping to uncover more about the reasons behind his adoption. "I often wonder why things turned out this way," he said, looking directly at Emily and David. "Why do some people have to suffer so much while others seem to have everything?" David sighed deeply, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Life isn't fair, son. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones made out of love." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He was closer than ever to understanding the truth. As the evening wore on, he listened intently, absorbing every word, every emotion. He was determined to uncover the story of his past and the reasons behind the decision that had changed his life forever. With a heavy heart and a head of questions, Ethan knew this was only the beginning of his journey. He had opened the door to his past, and there was no turning back now. The search for his identity, the answers he longed for, and the truth that had eluded him for so long were finally within reach. He was painting a heartbreaking picture of a young man on the brink of despair. As he spoke, Ethan watched his biological parents' reactions intently. He expected to see some hint of empathy or understanding on their faces, some sign that his story touched them. What he saw, however, left him perplexed and deeply hurt. Instead of showing compassion, Emily and David exchanged looks of disdain and disapproval. Their expressions hardened, and their words became cold and cutting. With a mixture of arrogance and relief, they told Ethan that they had made the right decision in giving him up for adoption, as they clearly could not have offered him a better life. Each word was like a stab in Ethan's heart. He had expected to find some understanding, perhaps even a hint of regret, but instead, he was met with an attitude of superiority and contempt. Emily and David seemed convinced they had done the right thing by removing him from their lives as if they had avoided an unwanted burden. Ethan struggled to maintain his composure, swallowing the tears that threatened to well up in his eyes. Disappointment and grief washed over him, but he refused to break down in front of them. Instead, he listened in silence as Emily and David continued to talk, each word more hurtful than the last. They told him it had been a difficult but necessary decision. They said they would not have been able to give him the life he deserved and that they would have been inadequate parents. They spoke of their struggle to survive and the sacrifices they had to make ends meet. Through it all, they made it clear that giving Ethan up for adoption had been a relief, a way to free themselves from a responsibility they couldn't handle. Ethan felt his heart break into pieces with every word. He had hoped to find a little love, a little regret. He had imagined that they might welcome him, feel a connection, and even show some sorrow for the years they had missed. Instead, he found only a more painful, harsh reality than he had ever anticipated. Emily's voice, tinged with bitterness, cut through his thoughts. "You see, it was for the best. We wouldn't have been able to provide for you. You deserved better, and we couldn't give you that." David nodded in agreement. "It was a decision made out of necessity. We had no other choice." Ethan's mind raced with conflicting emotions. The truth he had long sought was far more devastating than he had imagined. The parents he had dreamed of reconnecting with had no desire to rekindle a relationship. They had moved on, and his presence seemed only to remind them of their past struggles and perceived failures. As the conversation wound down, Emily and David looked relieved that it was nearing an end. Ethan's heart shattered, but his resolve was firm, so he stood up to leave. He thanked them for their time, his voice steady despite the turmoil. He knew he had to walk away with his head held high, even if his spirit was crushed. As he left the modest house and stepped back into the world outside, Ethan felt the weight of the encounter settle over him. The journey for truth had led him to a painful reality, but it was a reality he needed to face. He realized that the answers he sought were not the ones he had hoped for, but they were answers nonetheless. And in knowing the truth, no matter how harsh, he could begin to heal and move forward. Ethan walked away from Emily and David's home, not with the closure he had expected, but with a deeper understanding of himself and the complexities of life. He knew that he would carry the scars of this meeting forever, but he also knew that he had the strength to overcome them. His search for identity had taken a toll but also revealed his resilience and determination. And in that, he found a glimmer of hope for the future. I left him feeling even more disoriented. He had come seeking understanding and closure but found only rejection and indifference. To Emily and David, he was a distant memory, a decision made long ago and buried in the past. Despite the pain, Ethan stood firm. He knew that revealing his true identity would only complicate matters. He didn't want to see the greed or sudden interest in their eyes upon discovering that the poor young man in front of them was a successful millionaire. With a lump in his throat, Ethan stood up and thanked them for their time. He told them he understood their decision and didn't blame them for what they had done. But inside, he felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, disappointment, and a deep sense of loss. As he headed for the door, Ethan wondered if he could ever forgive his birth parents for the way they had treated him. Did they deserve his forgiveness, or were some wounds too deep to heal? Ethan prepared to face the next phase of his journey with a broken heart and a mind full of questions. He knew the truth would be painful but determined to see it through to the end. After all, he had come too far to give up now. Ethan left his birth parents' home with a broken heart and a mind full of confusion. Emily and David's hurtful words echoed in his ears, and the feeling of rejection clung to him like a heavy blanket. He walked through the unfamiliar streets, lost in thought, trying to understand what he had just experienced. When he felt he could no longer bear the weight of his emotions, a familiar sound brought him out of his reverie. The soft purr of a luxury engine was approaching, and Ethan looked up to see his private chauffeur pulling the sleek car to a stop at the curb. The contrast between his reality and the charade he had presented to his birth parents was stark and jarring. He climbed into the car, the comfort of the plush seats doing little to soothe the turmoil inside him. As they drove away, Ethan's mind raced. He had sought out his birth parents, hoping for answers, but instead found more questions. He had hoped for a connection but found only a chasm. Yet, despite the pain, he knew he couldn't let this encounter define him. Ethan's journey was far from over. He had uncovered a harsh truth but also realized the depth of his resilience. As the city lights blurred past, he vowed to continue his search for meaning and understanding, not just in his past but in the life he built for himself. The road ahead was uncertain, but Ethan was determined to navigate it with strength and courage, knowing that his story was still unfolding. That now felt more like a gilded cage than a sanctuary. The disparity between his life of privilege and the modest existence of his birth parents had never been more evident. Ethan reflected on the encounter with relief and embarrassment, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling within him. As the chauffeur, a discreet and loyal man who had worked for him for years, drove away from that modest neighborhood, Ethan looked out the window, watching the houses and streets fade into the distance. The gulf between his world and that of his birth parents seemed unbridgeable, and he wondered if he could ever find common ground. In the car's back seat, Ethan finally allowed himself to break down. The tears he had held back for so long welled up in his eyes, and sobs shook his body. The chauffeur, respectful of his boss's privacy, pulled up the partition separating the driver's cab from the back, giving Ethan the space he needed to vent. As the luxury car made its way through the city streets, Ethan thought of the shock and disbelief he had seen on Emily and David's faces when they saw the vehicle. It was as if, for a brief moment, they had glimpsed Ethan's true identity, but they quickly dismissed the idea as impossible. Ethan wondered what they would have thought if they had known the truth. Would they have changed their attitude toward him? Would they have shown remorse for their hurtful words, or would they have seen in him an opportunity to profit from his success? These questions haunted Ethan as the car drove through the city's most exclusive streets. Finally, they arrived at his building, an imposing skyscraper that housed his luxurious penthouse. Ethan thanked his chauffeur and headed for the elevator, eager to retreat to the comfort of his home. Once inside his penthouse, Ethan plopped on the couch, emotionally and physically exhausted. He looked around at the luxurious furnishings, feeling a sense of emptiness despite the luxury surrounding him. The encounter with his birth parents had left him more confused and heartbroken than ever. As he sat there, he thought about the stark contrast between his life and Emily and David's lives. He had grown up with every advantage while they had struggled just to get by. Yet, despite his success, he still felt an inexplicable void. He realized that material wealth couldn't fill the emotional gaps left by his past. Ethan knew he had a lot to process and many questions to answer. He needed to reconcile his feelings about his birth parents and the choices they had made. But for now, he allowed himself to grieve, letting the tears flow freely. It was a step toward healing, a necessary release after the emotional storm he had weathered. Ethan made a silent vow to himself in the silence of his penthouse. He would continue his journey of self-discovery, seeking answers and peace. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he had come too far to turn back now. The road ahead was uncertain, but Ethan was determined to forge his path, one step at a time. And he barely made enough to support them. The more Ethan read, the more he understood the dire situation his birth parents had been in. They were overwhelmed by financial hardships and had made the painful decision to give him up for adoption in hopes of giving him a better life. All his success and wealth seemed empty in comparison to the longing for connection and belonging he felt. He knew that the encounter with his birth parents had been only the beginning of a much longer journey. There were unanswered questions, wounds that needed to be healed, and a truth yet to be discovered. But for now, Ethan allowed himself to feel, letting the tears flow and the pain wash over him. In the solitude of his penthouse, Ethan promised himself that he would not give up. He would keep searching for answers, struggling to understand his past and finding his place in the world. Despite the rejection and the pain, he knew his story wasn't over, and he was determined to write his ending. An ending in which love and understanding would triumph over resentment and indifference. After spending the night immersed in his thoughts and emotions, Ethan awoke with new determination. He knew he could not let the painful encounter with his birth parents define his search for the truth. Some questions still needed answers, and he was determined to find them. With a clearer mind, Ethan went to his study and began to review the information his researchers had compiled on Emily and David. He examined every detail, searching for any clue that might shed light on the circumstances surrounding their decision to give him up for adoption. As he delved deeper into the documents, Ethan discovered that his birth parents had fallen on hard times before his birth. David had lost his job and struggled to find steady employment, while Emily worked long hours in a factory and barely made enough to support them. The more he read, the more he understood the dire situation his birth parents had been in. Overwhelmed by financial hardships, they had made the painful decision to give him up in hopes of giving him a better life. This revelation stirred a mix of emotions within Ethan: compassion, sadness, and a growing understanding of their predicament. Determined to learn more, Ethan decided to dig deeper into their past. He contacted his researchers and instructed them to gather more information about Emily and David's lives before and after his birth. He wanted to understand their struggles, choices, and the reasons behind their actions. Days turned into weeks as Ethan continued his search. He uncovered stories of sacrifice, resilience, and heartbreak. He learned about the dreams his birth parents had given up and the hardships they had endured. Through it all, Ethan began to see them not as the indifferent figures who had rejected him but as flawed, struggling individuals who had made a difficult choice out of love and necessity. With this new perspective, Ethan felt a sense of closure begin to form. He still had many questions but no longer felt the same bitterness and anger. Instead, he felt a growing sense of empathy and forgiveness. He realized that understanding his past was not just about finding answers but about finding peace within himself. Ethan knew his journey was far from over, but he was ready to face it with renewed strength and compassion. He vowed to continue seeking the truth, not just for himself but for the parents who had made a heartbreaking sacrifice in hopes of giving him a better future. As he moved forward, he held on to the belief that love and understanding would ultimately triumph over the pain of the past. In the end, Ethan's journey was not just about uncovering the truth of his origins but about discovering the depth of his resilience and the power of forgiveness. He had come a long way and was determined to continue forging his path with an open heart and an unwavering spirit. But feel a mixture of hope and dread. He knew the information he was about to uncover could either bring him the closure he desperately needed or open old wounds even further. Ethan arrived at the adoption agency on the day of the appointment, his heart pounding. The building was unassuming, a stark contrast to his accustomed luxury. He took a deep breath and stepped inside, greeted by a receptionist who directed him to a small, private room where the records would be presented. A few minutes later, a social worker carrying a thick folder entered the room. She introduced herself and explained that the documents included everything the agency had on his adoption: correspondence, legal documents, and notes from the social workers involved. As Ethan began to sift through the papers, a clearer picture of his past emerged. He found letters between the agency and his birth parents detailing their initial contact and subsequent meetings. The notes revealed the depth of Emily and David's financial struggles, their attempts to find work, and their numerous discussions with social workers about their options. One letter, in particular, caught Ethan's attention. It was a handwritten note from Emily to the adoption agency, expressing her deep sorrow and heartbreak over the decision to give up her child. She wrote about the nights she spent crying, the guilt that haunted her, and her hope that her son would have a better life than she could provide. David added a brief but poignant message, echoing Emily's sentiments and expressing his grief and regret. Ethan's eyes welled up with tears as he read the heartfelt words of his birth parents. It became clear that their decision was not made lightly or out of a desire to escape responsibility but out of a profound love and hope for a better future for him. Among the documents, he also found records of the counseling sessions Emily and David had attended. The notes from the social workers indicated that they had been offered various forms of support but ultimately felt that adoption was the best option for their child's well-being. There were no signs of coercion or undue pressure. Instead, they had made a painful but considered decision. Armed with this new understanding, Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. While the truth was bittersweet, it also provided the closure he sought. He realized that his birth parents had acted out of love and a desire to give him the life they couldn't offer, and that their rejection during his visit was likely a defense mechanism born of years of pain and regret. As he left the adoption agency, Ethan felt a renewed purpose. He knew he still had a long way to go in his journey of self-discovery, but he was now more equipped to face it with compassion and understanding. He vowed to honor his birth parents' sacrifice by living a life of empathy and generosity, and to continue seeking connections that brought him closer to the sense of belonging he had always yearned for. Ethan returned to his penthouse, the luxurious surroundings no longer feeling like a gilded cage but a testament to the opportunities his birth parents had hoped to give him. He knew the path ahead would still be challenging, but he felt ready to embrace it with an open heart, determined to write the following chapters of his story with love and understanding. But because we love you so much, we want to give you a chance at a better life. Our situation is dire, and we can barely afford to care for ourselves. We want you to have opportunities that we can't provide. Lewis's letter echoed these sentiments, expressing his deep regret and sorrow. I hope you understand one day that we made this choice out of love. We want you to have everything we couldn't give you. We want you to thrive and be happy. As Ethan read each heartfelt letter, the tears he had held back for so long finally spilled over. The pain and love that permeated each word touched him deeply, and he realized that his birth parents had made a tough decision out of profound love and concern for his future. The rest of the documents included counseling notes and records of the agency's interactions with Emily and David. The social workers' notes detailed the couple's struggles and genuine desire for their child to have a better life. There was no indication of coercion or pressure, only the heartbreaking reality of a couple facing insurmountable challenges. Sarah, the social worker, watched Ethan with a compassionate expression as he processed the information. It's clear they loved you very much, Ethan. They wanted you to have the opportunities they couldn't provide. Ethan nodded, tears still streaming down his face. I see that now. Thank you for showing me this. As he left the adoption agency, the mixture of hope and fear he had felt earlier was replaced by a sense of understanding and closure. While the truth was painful, it also brought him a more profound empathy for his birth parents. Their rejection during his visit made more sense now. They had probably been protecting themselves from reopening old wounds. Back in his penthouse, Ethan felt a newfound clarity. The luxurious surroundings that once felt empty now seemed to have a deeper meaning. They were a testament to the sacrifices his birth parents had made in hopes that he would have a better life. He understood that his journey wasn't just about finding answers but about finding peace and making sense of his past. Ethan honored his birth parents' sacrifice by living a life of empathy and generosity. He would use his success to help others, just as his birth parents had hoped he would have the chance to thrive. And while the wounds of his past might never fully heal, he knew he could move forward with a heart more open to love and understanding. With this resolution, Ethan felt ready to face the future. He knew there would be challenges, but he was determined to meet them with strength and compassion. His story was still unfolding, and he was committed to writing it with the love and understanding that his birth parents had hoped for him all those years ago. Because of the immense love I feel for you, I want to give you the opportunity to have a better life. You deserve a stable home and parents who can care for you and provide you with everything we cannot. Please understand and forgive us for this challenging choice someday. Emily's words touched Ethan deeply. For the first time, he could see beyond the pain and rejection he had felt during his encounter with them. He could glimpse the love and sacrifice behind their decision. As he read on, Ethan discovered that Emily and David had gone through a counseling process before making the final decision to place their son for adoption. They had explored other options, but in the end, they had concluded that adoption was the best way to ensure their baby's well-being and future. With each new revelation, Ethan felt his perspective change. The resentment and anger he had harbored for so long transformed into understanding and empathy. He could see his birth parents in a new light, not as the cold and heartless people he had encountered, but as two human beings who had made a heartbreaking decision out of love. When he finished reading the last letter, Ethan was silent, processing everything he had discovered. The social worker, Sarah, offered him a tissue and allowed him to assimilate the information. Finally, Ethan looked up and thanked Sarah for her help. He knew there was still much to process and heal, but for the first time in a long time, he felt he had found a vital piece of the puzzle of his life. Ethan left the adoption agency with a new perspective and a deeper understanding, determined to face the future with a more open mind and heart. He knew the road ahead would not be easy, but he was willing to take it one step at a time. Back in his penthouse, the luxurious surroundings no longer felt like a gilded cage but rather a reminder of the opportunities his birth parents had hoped to provide him. He looked around at the artwork adorning the walls and felt more alone than ever, yet more connected to his origins. All his success and wealth seemed empty compared to the longing for connection and belonging he felt. Ethan knew that the encounter with his birth parents and the discoveries from the adoption records were only the beginning of a much longer journey. There were unanswered questions, wounds that needed to be healed, and a truth yet to be fully discovered. But for now, Ethan allowed himself to feel, letting the tears flow and the pain wash over him. In the solitude of his penthouse, Ethan promised himself that he would not give up. He would keep searching for answers, striving to understand his past and find his place in the world. Despite the rejection and the pain, he knew his story wasn't over, and he was determined to write his ending. An ending in which love and understanding would triumph over resentment and indifference. After spending the night immersed in his thoughts and emotions, Ethan awoke with new determination. He knew he could not let the painful encounter with his birth parents define his search for the truth. Questions still needed answers, and he was determined to find them. With a clearer mind, Ethan went to his study and began to review the information his researchers had compiled on Emily and David. He examined every detail, searching for any clue to shed light on his adoption circumstances. As he dove deeper into the documents, Ethan discovered more about the hardships his birth parents had faced. He realized their decision had been driven by a complex mix of love, desperation, and hope for his future. This understanding transformed his perspective, turning his resentment into compassion. Armed with this newfound empathy, Ethan felt ready to move forward. He knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was committed to facing it with an open heart and a determination to understand his past. As he took each step, he held on to the belief that love and understanding could triumph over pain and resentment, paving the way for a future filled with hope and connection. He described the journey he had undertaken to find his roots, the emotional turmoil he had experienced, and the understanding he had gained from reading their letters. He expressed his gratitude for the sacrifices they had made and the difficult decisions they had faced out of love and concern for his future. Emily and David listened intently, their initial shock giving way to a mixture of emotions. They were visibly moved by Ethan's words and the realization that their son had grown into a successful and compassionate man. Tears filled Emily's eyes as she reached across the table to hold Ethan's hand. "We always hoped you would have a better life," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We never stopped thinking about you and wondering how you were." David nodded, his eyes moist with tears. "We did what we thought was best, even though it broke our hearts. Knowing you understand, seeing you now means the world to us." Ethan felt a wave of relief and connection wash over him. The wall of pain and misunderstanding between them began to crumble. He shared more about his life, his achievements, and the struggles he had faced along the way. He wanted them to know that their sacrifice had not been in vain. As the evening progressed, the conversation flowed more easily. They talked about their lives, their hopes, and their dreams. Emily and David shared stories from their past, painting a fuller picture of their lives and the challenges they had overcome. Ethan listened with genuine interest, feeling a deeper bond with them as he learned more about his origins. The meal ended with a sense of reconciliation and hope. Ethan felt that a significant chapter of his life had come to a close, but a new one was beginning, one built on understanding, empathy, and a shared desire to move forward together. As they left the restaurant, Ethan hugged his birth parents, feeling the warmth of their embrace and the promise of a renewed relationship. He knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them with the support and love of both his adoptive and biological families. In the following days, Ethan kept in close contact with Emily and David. They started to build a relationship founded on honesty and mutual respect. Ethan introduced them to his adoptive parents, Grace and William, who welcomed them with open arms. The two families, united by their love for Ethan, began to form a unique and supportive network. Ethan's journey had come full circle. He had found the answers he sought and healed the wounds of his past. More importantly, he had discovered the strength of his resilience and the power of love and understanding. With a heart full of gratitude and hope, Ethan looked forward to the future, knowing that he was not alone and that his story was one of triumph over adversity. His experience taught him that even the most painful journeys could lead to profound healing and connection. And as he continued to navigate the complexities of life, he did so with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to fostering love and empathy in all his relationships. His happy childhood was with his adoptive parents, Grace and William, who had given him endless love and support. He recounted how he had discovered his passion for business, how he had built his empire from the ground up, and the many obstacles he had overcome along the way. Emily and David listened in awe, marveling at their biological son's accomplishments. But Ethan also shared his more profound, more personal journey, his search for identity, his longing to know his roots, and his desire to understand the circumstances of his adoption. He spoke of the painful first meeting they had had and how deeply it had affected him. Then, Ethan pulled out the letters he had found in the adoption agency's files. In a soft voice, he began to read them the words they had written so many years before. Emily and David were moved to tears as they heard their words, filled with love and sacrifice. Ethan explained how those letters had changed his perspective and allowed him to see things differently. He thanked them for the love they had shown him in making the difficult decision to give him up for adoption and assured them that he held no grudges or resentment towards them. Emily and David, deeply moved, apologized for their behavior during the first meeting. They admitted that they had been filled with shame and fear when confronted with their biological son and that they had reacted defensively to hide their pain. As the conversation flowed, barriers began to break down. Emily and David shared more details about the difficulties they had faced in the past and how the decision to place Ethan for adoption had been the most challenging of their lives. They expressed their regret at not being able to give him the home and stability he deserved and their deep joy at seeing the successful and compassionate man he had become. Ethan, in turn, told them of the deep sense of belonging he felt growing up with Grace and William, who had provided him with a loving and nurturing environment. He spoke of the values they had instilled in him and how their support had been instrumental in shaping his character and guiding him to success. As the evening progressed, the conversation turned more personal and heartfelt. They shared stories, laughter, and tears, finding common ground in their shared experiences and newfound understanding. The initial tension and nervousness gradually gave way to a sense of connection and mutual respect. By the end of the meal, Ethan felt a profound sense of closure and reconciliation. He had come to understand his birth parents' actions and motivations, and he felt a renewed sense of gratitude for the love and sacrifice that had shaped his life. As they said their goodbyes, Ethan hugged Emily and David tightly, feeling a bond that transcended the years of separation. He knew their journey was beginning, and he looked forward to building a relationship based on love, understanding, and mutual respect. In the following days and weeks, Ethan kept in close contact with Emily and David, inviting them to be a part of his life and sharing more about his world. He also introduced them to Grace and William, who welcomed them with open arms, creating a unique and supportive family network. Ethan's journey had come full circle. He had found the answers he sought, healed the wounds of his past, and built a bridge between his adoptive and biological families. With a heart full of gratitude and hope, he looked forward to a future where love and understanding would continue to guide his path. His experience taught him that even the most challenging journeys could lead to profound healing and connection. And as he continued to navigate the complexities of life, he did so with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to fostering love and empathy in all his relationships. Emily and David, proud and independent, were hesitant to accept his offer. They were not used to receiving such generosity. They worried about being a burden or appearing to take advantage of their son's success. But Ethan reassured them, explaining that this was his way of giving back and showing his gratitude for the love and sacrifice they had made. "You're not a burden," Ethan said gently. "I want to help you because I care about and appreciate everything you've done. This is about family." Eventually, Emily and David accepted his help. Ethan arranged for them to move into a comfortable home in a safe and friendly neighborhood. He also paid off their outstanding debts and set up a fund to ensure their financial stability in later years. With their immediate financial worries eased, Emily and David began to enjoy a new chapter in their lives. They spent more time with Ethan, deepening their bond and creating new memories. They also formed a warm relationship with Grace and William, who embraced them as part of the extended family. Ethan's gesture of support went beyond financial aid. It was an expression of his love and commitment to building a genuine relationship with his birth parents. He found joy in seeing Emily and David happy and comfortable and cherished their time together, sharing stories, laughter, and life experiences. Over the months and years, Ethan and his biological parents built a solid and enduring friendship. They met regularly, celebrated holidays and milestones together, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. Ethan came to see Emily and David as the people who had given him life and as cherished friends who had overcome significant adversity with love and resilience. In this new relationship phase, they learned to appreciate each other for who they were. Ethan admired Emily and David for their strength and determination, while they were proud of the compassionate and successful man he had become. Their bond was no longer defined by past decisions and regrets but by mutual respect, understanding, and love. As time went on, Ethan continued to navigate his journey of self-discovery with a sense of fulfillment and peace. He had faced the challenges of his past, found forgiveness, and built meaningful connections with both his adoptive and biological families. The relationships he had nurtured and the love he had found enriched his life. Ethan's story was a testament to the power of empathy, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of family bonds. He had learned that even the most difficult paths could lead to profound healing and connection. As he looked to the future, he did so with a heart full of gratitude, knowing that he was surrounded by love and supported by the people who mattered most to him. His journey had come full circle, transforming pain into understanding and separation into unity. With his adoptive and biological parents by his side, Ethan embraced the future with hope and determination, ready to write the following chapters of his life with the love and compassion that had guided him through his journey. Emily and David were reluctant to accept his help, feeling they did not deserve such generosity. But Ethan assured them that he was doing it out of love and gratitude and that nothing would make him happier than to see them enjoy life without worries. Touched by their biological son's gesture, Emily and David finally accepted his help. Together, they found a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood where they could peacefully enjoy their retirement. Ethan cared for all the details, ensuring they had everything they needed to live comfortably. But Ethan didn't stop there. He also offered Emily and David the opportunity to be a more meaningful part of his life. He introduced them to his adoptive parents, Grace and William, who welcomed them with open arms and thanked them for the beautiful gift they had given by entrusting Ethan into their care. Together, they formed an extended family united by love and gratitude. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, and memorable moments, creating new memories and healing the wounds of the past. Ethan also shared his success with Emily and David, inviting them to participate in his company's events and showing them the positive impact he was having on society. He told them about his values, his desire to give back, and how he had found a purpose beyond money. Emily and David were proud of the man their biological son had become. They saw the kindness, compassion, and strength they wished to instill in him. Although they knew they could not take credit for his upbringing, they were deeply grateful to be a part of his life. As the years passed, the bond between Ethan, his adoptive parents, and his biological parents grew stronger. Emily and David became beloved members of the extended family, and the sense of loss and regret that had once weighed heavily on them began to fade. They found joy in their newfound family, cherishing the moments they spent together and the love surrounding them. Ethan continued to honor both his adoptive and biological parents, understanding that each had played a vital role in his journey. He drew strength from the support and love of his entire family, knowing that he was the product of their combined sacrifices and care. The journey began with questions, and the pain had transformed into healing and connection. Ethan's life was more prosperous and more fulfilling because of the relationships he had built and the love he had found. He knew that his story was one of resilience, compassion, and the enduring power of family. With a heart full of gratitude, Ethan looked forward to the future, confident that he could face any challenge with the support of his family. He continued to live purposefully, guided by the values both sets of parents instilled in him. And as he navigated the complexities of life, he did so with a renewed sense of peace and fulfillment, knowing that he was truly loved and supported. The extended family celebrated many milestones together, each occasion a testament to the strength of their bonds and the healing power of love. Ethan's journey had come full circle, and he embraced the future with hope and determination, ready to write the following chapters of his life with the love and compassion that had guided him through his past, and a loving environment that had allowed him to thrive. He thanked Emily and David for their sacrifice and the love that had motivated their difficult decision. He acknowledged the friends and colleagues who had supported him throughout his journey. "This celebration is not just about me," Ethan said, his voice filled with emotion. "It's about all of us, love, sacrifice, and the bonds that make us family. It's about the strength and resilience we find in each other and the understanding that family is not limited to blood ties but extends to those who love and support one another." The guests listened intently, moved by Ethan's heartfelt words. The garden, illuminated by twinkling lights, felt magical, symbolizing the bright future ahead and the beautiful journey they had all shared. Ethan continued, "I am grateful for every single one of you. You've all played a part in my story, and today, we celebrate that. We celebrate the love that binds us, the sacrifices made out of love, and the understanding that has brought us closer together." He then turned to his birth parents. "Emily, David, your decision was made out of love, and I want you to know that I understand that now. I am grateful for your sacrifice and honored to have you in my life." Emily and David, tears streaming down their faces, smiled and nodded, overwhelmed by the love and acceptance they felt. Ethan's adoptive parents, Grace and William, stood proudly by his side. "Grace, William, you gave me a home and a family. Your love and support have been my foundation, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart." The evening was filled with laughter, tears, and heartfelt conversations. Friends and family mingled, sharing stories and creating new memories. The sense of unity and love was palpable, a testament to the incredible journey Ethan and his family had embarked on together. The celebration continued late into the night, with music, dancing, and joyous festivities. It was a night to remember, symbolizing the triumph of love and understanding over adversity. In the following years, Ethan continued to use his platform to advocate for adoption and support others in their quest to find their roots. He established a foundation dedicated to providing resources and assistance to adoptees and their families, ensuring that others could experience the same healing and connection he had found. Ethan's life was a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of family. He faced each new challenge with courage and determination, knowing that a network of love and support surrounded him. And so, Ethan's story continued. A story of triumph over adversity, love and understanding, and the incredible strength found in the connections we make with others. Full of love and opportunity for guiding and supporting him every step of the way. He told them how much they meant to him and how their unconditional love had been the pillar of his life. He then turned to Emily and David. With tears in his eyes, he thanked them for the greatest act of love they could have done, allowing him to have a better life. He told them that he understood the sacrifice they had made and that he admired them for their courage and generosity. Ethan also spoke of how his journey of self-discovery had taught him valuable lessons. He had learned that love and forgiveness were more potent than resentment and that family was not limited to blood ties. He had discovered that every person in his life, from his adoptive parents to his biological parents, had played a pivotal role in his growth and happiness. As Ethan spoke, he could feel the love and emotion emanating from everyone present. His words touched everyone's hearts, reminding them of the power of love, compassion, and human connection. When Ethan finished his speech, there was a moment of silence followed by loud applause. Hugs and tears mingled as everyone came forward to express their love and support. At that moment, Ethan realized that his story was not his alone but belonged to all the people who had been a part of it. Every decision, every sacrifice, and every act of love had helped shape the man he was today. As the celebration continued, Ethan looked around and saw his biological and adoptive family united by love and gratitude. He knew it didn't matter where he came from but the path he had traveled and the people he had chosen to love. In that instant, Ethan felt he had finally found his place in the world. It was not a physical place but a space in his heart where peace, understanding, and unconditional love resided. With a smile and a heart full of gratitude, Ethan promised himself to continue living with purpose and compassion. He knew his story was a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit, and he was determined to share it with the world. As the sun set over the horizon and the garden lights shone brighter, Ethan embraced his loved ones, knowing that no matter what, he would always have a home in their hearts. And with that certainty, he felt ready to face the future with courage, gratitude, and endless love. Ethan's story is a profoundly emotional and powerful journey that vividly demonstrates the strength of love and forgiveness. It begins with pain and uncertainty about his past, but ultimately, Ethan finds harmony and joy through understanding and reconnecting with his biological family. One of the story's highlights is Ethan's determination and courage in seeking the truth about his origins. He never gives up on his goal despite facing numerous challenges and heartache. This underscores the importance of understanding and accepting the past as an integral part of shaping the future. Forgiveness and love are crucial elements in this narrative. Ethan chooses to forgive his biological parents, not because they are perfect, but because he understands that their decision was made out of love and sacrifice. Through forgiveness and opening his heart, he finds inner peace and builds a new relationship with them based on mutual understanding and respect. The story also emphasizes that family is not limited to blood ties. Ethan has two families, his adoptive and biological, and both play crucial roles. This affirms that love and support can come from various sources, and we should cherish all sincere relationships. Moreover, Ethan's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance and the human capacity to overcome adversity. It reminds us that no matter how many challenges we face, love and understanding can bring healing and happiness. Finally, Ethan's story is a personal journey and a source of inspiration for others seeking understanding and harmony in their lives. It teaches us that we can find peace and build meaningful connections through empathy, compassion, and an open heart. In conclusion, Ethan's story is a moving testament to the transformative power of love, forgiveness, and resilience. It highlights the importance of understanding our past, cherishing all forms of family, and facing life's challenges with courage and an open heart. This story is a beautiful reminder that, despite life's hardships, love and understanding can lead us to profound healing and connection.